bring in Robert Opio here from the Ice Sport Federation. I know one of the challenges, because we're still on the topic of infrastructure, and then we will get to how we can fix it. Because today is not just about airing issues, it's about what partnerships can we build to improve where we are and move forward as sport in this country. And I know, Robert, one of the biggest challenges you have is you only have one location in the whole of East Africa to play ice hockey.
East and Central.
East and Central. Tell us about it.
So first of all, I just want to point something out. Honorable Sifuna, you spoke about your dress code. I also have a tie, tuko pamoja. So in the sporting world, we usually see athletes whenever they come into play, they usually come dressed in suits, so you're in the right dress code for this moment. So when it comes to some of the successes, actually, successes first?
First, we're talking about the challenges of infrastructure, and then we'll get to the successes of what you've been managed to achieve despite the challenges in infrastructure.
So with the challenges, like she said, we have the only ice rink in East and Central Africa. And when you are looking at the comparison of sizes between the rink that we have, it's currently located at Panari Hotel. It's actually a third of the size of the NHL rink, and also NHL is like the FIFA of ice hockey, and also it's smaller than the one for the Olympics. For us as a team, we have a dream. We want to play in the Olympics, and it started from a long time ago. Last year, we managed to achieve one of those key steps, which is joining the International Ice Hockey Federation as an associate member. And now we are working into making sure that the players, they're having the right amount of ice time. Equipment, they're all set right now, but still at some point, they're going to need more equipment. So when you're looking at a professional player, a full set of gear from top to bottom, it costs almost $2,000. And do we have them in Kenya? Not really. The one place you can find it in Africa is in South Africa. And South Africa, they already have been impacted by the shipping costs, the taxes, already from these other countries. If you want to import one single player, and this is a senior player's equipment, by the time it arrives here, it's going to be almost $4,000. And that is for the full kit. So we've had the blessing and opportunity. We've had some of the key equipment providers like CCM and Warrior Hockey. They've donated some of those equipments to us. But as you know, by the time they get to customs and shipping, we have to pay some of these taxes as well. And so we get some of our fans and our supporters who help to bring these things in. Some of the other challenges, like I spoke about the only rink, it's a small size. We are trying to work with it. We've got almost 100 players who are the youth players. They usually practice on Saturday mornings. And this is limited time, a small size of an ice, and we need to have sufficient ice time. So we've negotiated with the Panari Hotel. They've given us a good rate whereby the players can be able to play. But then when you have more players, you need more ice time, you need more coaches and trainers. And it's something that we are still working on. But we are hoping that at some point we can have a facility that can be able to accommodate all of this. As you're talking about the private partnerships for some of these stadiums, early in the day we had Michael Finley, if I'm correct. Yeah, Michael Finley, he was talking about the Rwanda Stadium when it was being upgraded. It will be great when you have an opportunity whereby rather than just having one stadium that's focused on one sport, can we have it to be multi-purpose? You've got something like the Prudential Stadium in New Jersey that's being played by two different teams. You've got basketball, you've got ice hockey, you've got concerts going on. So maybe perhaps when the discussions or setups of the basketball stadium it's being worked on, we can look at, can we make it to be multi-purpose? Can we be able to have more than just one rink in East and Central Africa for people to play? Other challenges, key challenges that we're having is accessibility to the sport. Equipment, I've touched on it. Also just getting to the rink, the ice time itself. Not everybody can afford to pay for it. So as a federation, we try to negotiate. Can we be able to pay for it in a way that more people can be able to come in? But we can't do much as a federation by itself. When I was talking to the chairman of the South African Ice Hockey Federation, one of the things he noted was we can't rely on the government by itself. Government can't cover 100% of all the fees. So when you have a tournament, you've got, let's say the government can provide maybe 20, 30%. Then after that, you've got the International Ice Hockey Federation. They say we can also contribute a certain amount. But for us, we are a sport whereby none of us are being paid. No executive, no player, no one is being paid at this stage. We're playing out of passion. But even that passion, that gets to a point whereby you have bills to pay, you have people to take care of. You've got the sport that you need to represent also. So partnerships, that's also something that we are hoping to be able to get support out of. Lastly, in terms of some of the tournaments that we are facing, we've been invited to, we are hoping that we can be able to also get funding around this aspect. So an opportunity whereby we've got more than 5 tournaments we've been invited to. Latin America, Africa Cup of Nations Ice Hockey was supposed to happen this year with 6 of the African countries that are playing, but that one wasn't able to happen. So these challenges, they do tend to happen. But we are hoping that over time, the partnerships, whether it's government-wise, whether it's private partnerships, we can be able to overcome some of these things.
When you listen to the challenges of Kenyan sport, it's depressing.
It's just the tip, by the way.
How many of you have watched ice hockey in Kenya? Oh my goodness, we're like 4 of us. Like 3, 4, 5 of them. Okay, that doesn't add up. But like 4 of them, they are journalists, so we kind of have to. Sorry?
There's a game tonight.
There's a game tonight?
Yes. So
at the Panari.
Tonight at the Panari Rink. There are games every Thursday. You can be able to come and check it out. Entrance is free. Only one condition, dress warm. It gets cold in there. Yeah.
And on Saturday morning, I know there's another one.
Saturday morning is the
but
kids.
it's depressing when you hear, I mean, in Kenya, there's a lot of people who play sport for the love of it. But as you say, Robert, passion doesn't pay bills. And finding a way to monetize our sport is, I think, a lot that we can learn from the United States. When you hear the figures that are basketball, even ice hockey itself, that the players are being paid abroad, it just, it's mind-boggling to think that our players here are not paid at all. They do it for the love of it. I want to brighten things up a bit and come to you, Sandra. Savara, we are coming there. And come to you, Sandra, because what Twende Sport has managed to do is professionalize basketball in Kenya. We did talk a bit about infrastructure. The last game, one of the last games I came to watch when you were training for BAL, the game had to start 2.5 hours late because, it's not her fault, because it was raining, and when it rains, there's a leak at Nyayo Stadium that creates sparks in the roof. And that is a hazard waiting to happen. So they had to switch off the lights for 2.5 hours. But eventually the game began. But Sandra, you guys, let's talk about better things. Smile. Talk about what you're doing at Nairobi City Thunder as Twende Sports to make it professional and to become the first Kenyan team to represent us at BAL. And probably my friend Sifuna in the meantime can take notes back to the county government.
The show must go on. So whether it rains, sparks. Yeah, so Twende Sports, we acquired Thunder in July of 2023. And a big part of that motivation was seeing what the NB Africa was doing with the Basketball Africa League and wanting to be able to tap into that. On the second side of it was wanting to build a pipeline of Kenyan basketball talent and showing the world what Kenyan talent can do in the basketball scene. So when we acquired the team, one of the things that we did was give every player and coach a contract, right? So a player goes from maybe a team where they're being paid 2,000 shillings a week to show up, train, play a game. If they win, maybe they get a 1,000 shilling bonus. You're going to now, I have a contract. Regardless of the amount, I know that at the end of the month, I'm getting a certain amount of money, okay? And then they have health insurance. So the player knows if I'm tripped, I break something, at least I know that a certain amount of my healthcare costs are going to be covered. So that was the first part of just getting the players, the coaches comfortable with the arrangement. So you do that, what you then see is an improvement in the product. Because all of a sudden, players who are earning maybe 10,000, 12,000 shillings a month don't have to go and look for a side hustle. Basketball can be their main job, okay? So that also changes the amount of effort, focus they put into the games. Players are now out of team time on their own, watching game film of different teams, trying to improve, going to the gym themselves. So we've seen, the first step was to just focus on improving the product. Once you have a quality product, other things can come. So product is first. Second was building the fan base, building the eyeballs behind the team. When we acquired the team, it had 1,900 followers, 1,200 on Facebook, 700 on Instagram. We're 115,000 today, about 35K Instagram, 68K TikTok, Facebook, I think 10K. So really the idea was show Kenyans and show Africans what a quality product can look like and build the eyeballs behind the game. What that has shown us is that there's latent fandom for basketball in this region. There's fans in waiting. They don't know they are fans yet. But when they see the product, they're like, oh my God. Basketball is quick, because every run, something is happening. It's a layup, it's a dunk, it's a block, something crazy is happening, right? So the other step was just exposing fans to the game and showing them there's actually a really quality sports product that Kenyans can be proud of. So that was part 2. Once you build the eyeballs behind the game and you have a committed community, all of a sudden, partners are interested. They're like, okay, because we know that sports communities are deeply engaged communities. When we went to Kigali for BAL, we had fans come by bus. So we partnered with a bus company to give, bus fans over. We had a deal with Rwanda, which could have been KQ, but it is what it is. So we are seeing that deep commitment in our fan base. We had watch parties here. So all of a sudden now you're telling partners, we have a good product. We have a committed audience. Would you like to engage? Okay, so that has also helped us in terms of just helping the math and the economics of it. So next steps for us is now really curating the fan experience. So you've gone from 1,900 followers on socials to 115,000. Then you put out a poster and say, we have a game tomorrow at 4 p.m., which we do, by the way, Nyayo Stadium. Then you show up to Nyayo Stadium, okay? You show up to Nyayo Stadium, and then you realize there's a double booking. You've been booked, and then volleyball is still training, okay? So then you wait for like 2 hours. Then it rains, and then it's sparky on the roof. Then you have to shut down everything until it calms down. And then if it calms down, it's still drizzling inside the arena. So you open your umbrella. So you're selling this product to fans, and then they're coming and just having such a subpar experience. So for us, the next piece is to think through how do we address the facility question? And we need to do this in tandem with other partners. I think one of the things we've realized is it's great that Thunder is doing well, but it's really an ecosystem play, and it's a play of rising tides lift all boats. So for example, if we hold hands with 2-3 other teams, get some private capital, maybe get concessions on land in Nairobi, do an arena, okay? All of a sudden, all of us have training time outside of Nyayo Stadium. By the way, the court in Nyayo is really bad for athletes. One of our import players would not train at Nyayo because he's a pro, and he's like, this is unhealthy for me. So you have a quality facility, but then all of a sudden, we can play on Saturday afternoon. Savara can perform on Saturday night. Sunday morning, Asako can do an AGM. Sunday night, senators can do a team building. Monday, you can do a youth camp, so you can sweat the assets 24/7. So that's next step for us, and happy to chat with folks who want to sort of come together and think through how do we chart that path forward.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I think we're finished now. Actually, that's amazing. And I think a lot of teams in Kenya, not just in basketball, but sport across the board, can learn a lot from how Twende Sports is managing Nairobi City Thunder. I'm glad, Sandra, that you called it a product and not just a game, because I want to bring Savara into the conversation. And just so you know that these forums at the American Embassy work. Last year, we had one where I was on a panel, again, I was hosting with Savara, and I had invited Nedia Tieno, who's a former Harambee Starlets lady, and she sits on one of the committees at FKF. And she got in touch, I think she DM'd you as well, and then she got in touch with, I introduced her to Savara. She was almost fainting at the American Embassy. And then she got in touch before the Gabon game, Kenya-Gabon. And she said, do you think Savara would be willing to sing the national anthem for us? And I said, ask him. And in a heartbeat, he said, yes. Savara, tell me about that experience, which I know you did pro bono, but what type of opportunities it is opening when it comes to creating an entertainment ecosystem around sport.
1, 2. Yes, my name. I start with the song. Hello, hello, Nimeku. Yo. Thank you for having me, and this is a very important forum, and I really appreciate the fact that we are able to bring these things to light and act on them, especially now that Bwana Mheshimiwa is here. He is a man of doing things. He just doesn't talk. So things will flow. Music and sports have something in common. Music and sports, apart from any other product like food, which, you know, food is very momentarily. You celebrate it there and then, and it can be cooked differently at different points of the world. But music and sports are celebrated like at the same time globally. A win by Harambee Starlets is celebrated by all Kenyans at the same time. Savara's song or Major's song or any song about winning is celebrated by people all across the world. For example, people win the World Cup. So music and sports have a very important role to play because they have a super emotional connection and they evoke loyalty. Apart from anything else in the world, music and sports evoke a lot of loyalty from the consumers. So these two things must be in tandem, and a product, a consumable product and an ongoing or rather a forever product must be created out of this. And that's why music and sports have to work together. Other nations have been able to do this. For example, United States of America, but when it comes to countries like developing countries, Kenya, we haven't been able to connect the two because they run parallel. They don't do symbiotic kind of interactions. These situations must be created to be able to expand this kind of creative economy in sports. Those two must work hand in hand. We try. I've seen some events like, for example, the rally. The rally they have music. Rugby have music. But for example, football didn't have music per se. I was the first one, and I did it pro bono just to show that this can happen because halftime shows happen all over the world. Why can't halftime shows happen here? And yet, the crowds are singing along to music that's been created by musicians. So those two things have to come together. The reason why I did it even pro bono was when I put it in sports, rather. So not to digress, but just to hit the point. In sports, we haven't been able to create lifestyle brands. The storytelling, in creating a product, there has to be a good storytelling. I had to do storytelling by doing that national anthem pro bono for people to see. And when people saw, everyone now wants to do a halftime show. There's been interest from all parties. So there had to be a guinea pig, and I had to do it. And that storytelling is what evokes emotion. Apart from when Omanyala is running 100-meter and winning, that's so momentarily. And apart from that situation, I don't have a reason to celebrate Omanyala. I'm not given. So the storytelling around Omanyala has to be commercialized. That's why you have people like Marek in the audience who works in the creative economy and tries to commercialize it. So we need to storytell about our athletes. I don't know anything about a footballer, famous footballers. All I know is their stories about how they failed, Dennis Oliech. I don't know about his triumph. I don't know about his lifestyle. The reason why you've bought into Soul Generation is because we showed you the lifestyle of these people. So we made sure you have an emotional connection to these people. So with sports, I would really urge, I want to see how the hockey team celebrates behind the scenes. And that content shouldn't be behind the scenes content. Should be content that has to be commercialized, put on TV, put on, like, sold on, you know, for the young people to understand that this situation is exalted. But when a young kid only sees Omanyala during Olympics, you don't expect him to buy any merchandise from Omanyala, but they will buy a product from Savara because they are seeing my music video every other day. So the interaction between sports and music has to happen in a way that we need to understand what's happening in sports. The reason why one of the reasons why I didn't do sports per se is because sports wasn't glorified. Yeah, it wasn't glorified. And at that time, music started making more sense to me. I still do sports. That's why I'm here, and I'm so passionate about this. But guys, we need to develop products that are commercialized, away from only someone thinking of, okay, I win the Grand Prix, I get I don't know how many millions, and life in Asia. And then also, that breeds the how can I call that energy? I don't like that energy, but maybe it's tall poppy syndrome in this country. We've made there's something called, I call it misplaced humility. Yeah, I call it misplaced humility. We have approached sports in a way that when you win, it's okay to chest thump, you know? It's okay to celebrate, and it's okay to say, I'm the best in the world. And nobody can do anything about that. It's okay. But the energy in this nation is of humility. Like when you win, kuwa humble. Yes. And that energy suppresses celebration, suppresses brands coming out of sports. We don't have a sports personality here who's, how can I say, who talks a lot, you know, who engages people, who can say nonsense, and who can say things that can spark conversation. Most of our sportsmen are like, you have to win, bro, How do you create a personality out of that? Look at the 100 meter, the 100 meter. There's this 100 meter guy from the States. Miles, oh my God, Lyles. That guy has a personality, like even as a musician, I cannot. And you can see why brands associate with him. But here, someone has won the biggest race in the country, but our energy tells him, "Wait, tulia, be humble, relax, don't celebrate your win." And then the whole nation becomes like, let's just speak slow, let's speak on a low voice, you cannot shout, No. So it's the energy. So I'm telling you guys, if you don't change that attitude and energy, our athletes will always be humble people living where? In Kerio Valley. But yes, but you cannot, it's the truth, guys. People buy into opulence. Let's not lie to ourselves here. People buy into success and opulence. But if you don't show a young kid the success of Omanyala, having a mansion, interacting with people, showing opulence, living, people will not exalt sports. So let's make sports have an entertainment value by doing that.
Thank you. There's a reason why Sauti Sol was so big. They were loud, not necessarily vocally, but they were loud. You could not ignore them. I do want to talk a little bit about branding of athletes, but Sifuna has been taking notes furiously. And if I don't let him speak, we'll be having a 1-hour speech at the end of it. Honorable Senator, given what we've been discussing in terms of both for infrastructure, of branding, of partnerships with government, of asking our friends to fix Nyayo Stadium roof, and keeping in mind that, and we were told this at lunch, I was fortunate to sit in the VIP lunch, there was a speech that said American businessmen want to come and invest in Kenya. They're looking for the opportunities. And we're here discussing challenges that America has resolved. Let's bring them, let's invite them. So speak to that, please.
Yeah, first of all, let me pick from where Savara has left. It frustrates me greatly that the people who are allowed in this country, we are very few. Fortunately for me, I am not one of those people. I was having a fight just the other day that I feel like our country doesn't fight for us at all. So we're just being bullied in the international arena, left, right, and center, including by entities like Tanzania, who shouldn't be bullying us. But somehow, there is a conspiracy in this country for us not to have that conversation. And I will explain that maybe in another forum, because I get a bit emotional, and we might go into something else. But let me start with sports infrastructure. It is very frustrating just hearing you speak about your experiences at Nyayo. That facility, as I've told you, is older than some of us. That is a good, honest truth. And what Savara has said, some of these people, especially people in parliament, they need to see things. If they don't see it, their minds cannot visualize it. And the best example when it comes to sports infrastructure is there was a time in this country when sports betting was nothing. It was not there. And when it was introduced, I remember the early days of SportPesa and the others. The people sitting in parliament, do you know, they imposed a taxation on sports betting. And because they did not know the potential of sports betting, they said all the money that is going to be collected as taxation from sports betting is going to build sports infrastructure. That was the original idea of the sporting fund. We were supposed to have all these facilities that he's talking about in all the 290 constituencies until the money came in. And then these guys realized we are struggling to do all these other things, and there is this money here sitting called a sports fund. They brought an amendment to introduce clauses that says 60% of the sports fund, the money that is realized from sports gambling, is now used for something called universal health care. That is where we lost it. Because those old men sitting there in parliament, most of it, and this is why I get very annoyed by these woke people who don't run for election. Because 90% of the people in that parliament, if you went and asked, okay, how many of you know who won the Super Bowl this year? What do you think would be the response? Correct. They have no idea. This is the biggest sporting event. If you ask somebody like, I don't want to mention names, I'll be in trouble. What is Coachella, for instance? What is Coachella? What do you think the response would be if we were discussing Coachella in the Senate? That's what I'm saying. Huyu anasimama kiti gani? That is what we would be asked. So they need to visualize. And my biggest problem is that until they see it, most of them cannot envision it. I'm sorry for the things that you're going through, but I'm telling you, if we don't change the people in power, there's nothing that is going to change. They need to be able to appreciate these things. The second thing, this is my first time in parliament, by the way. In the previous parliament, we had a conversation. If you look at the Sports Act of Kenya, nobody is going to put money in an enterprise, Carol, that they do not control. It is not possible. The reason why you commercialize sport in the US is because people own those teams. Now, in Kenya, every sporting entity is registered as a society. Now, if you look at the provisions of the Sports Act, I'll give you two quick examples. When it comes to registrations of any sports organization, you are supposed to submit a constitution. Constitutions only exist in societies. Companies have memorandum and articles of association. Now, it requires under 46(6) that your organization must be open to the public in its leadership, activities, and membership. There is no one going to put their money in Gor Mahia if they don't own Gor Mahia. How can you? Why would anyone do that? You have no control of the decisions that the organization makes, the sorts of sponsorships that you can get into. They have their own elections. They believe that these are community clubs. They are owned. Who owns Gor Mahia, by the way? Or who owns AFC? You own Mutu AFC. The AFC Leopards. AFC Leopards is supposed to be owned by lawyers. I am a lawyer, by the way. I have not put a single shilling in Gor Mahia or AFC, but it is mine because I'm a lawyer. So you come from America with your money, you want to invest into, and AFC and Gor Mahia are the biggest brands when it comes to sports in Kenya, if they were commercialized. I'll give you another example of that same act, section 43. If your sports organization has to borrow money, you need permission of the minister. I mean, guys, so you own Thunder, you want to put money in whatever, that infrastructure that you want to build, you have these venture funds and whoever, they want to give you a loan or concessions, whatever you want. You have to go to Mvuria, who, by the way, I was told somewhere here. Yesterday, I was calling him. He didn't pick my call. I was hoping to find him here. The Kenya Lionesses were going to travel without the head coach. I mean, guys, we need to be serious. Where was I anyway? So you have to go to Mvuria for him to give you permission to borrow money to grow your business. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So last term, I was not a member of parliament, but I was still the Secretary General of ODM, the largest political party in Kenya by following. And we have members of parliament in both houses. So I sat down with one of the members of parliament. He was then a member of the sports committee in the National Assembly. Do you know, we proposed amendments to the Sports Act. And we said, you need to allow sports organizations to register in a different way as companies so that somebody can say, Nairobi City Thunder is owned by Sifuna, I have 100 shares, and I can bind this organization, I can get these sponsors, I can get equity, I can do all these things for me to grow my sporting organization. It was shot down in the National Assembly. That amendment was defeated in the National Assembly. When I met Drew, I told him, I am willing to try again. Now I'm in the Senate. We propose very good laws in the Senate, but there is an adage in the Senate that the National Assembly is where Senate ideas go to die. For instance, now I have an amendment to the Sports Act to require that county governments, like Nairobi City County, must allocate a minimum of 1% of the money that we send them to support registered sporting associations in Nairobi, so that every time they have a tournament, they don't go to, they actually come to us with a begging bowl every single time. You need 100,000 shillings for the team to rent a venue, or to pay coaches, or to even travel, or even to eat. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And you go through Nairobi County's budget, not a single shilling is allocated to these sporting associations. Now, unfortunately, I have convinced my colleagues in the Senate, and we have passed the bill, which we have done. It goes to the National Assembly. Now, the National Assembly has all sorts of beef with the Senate. All sorts of beef. And they take it, those guys are hostage takers. They will hold the entire country hostage until they get what they want. And I'm not afraid of them. I know, I have said this publicly. Like, this fight they have over the national government, CDF, they will do anything. They will even refuse to pass county allocations until they get their CDF. That is how bad it is. So we send our ideas there because the law requires that it passes in both houses. They will kill it there. I'm expecting my bill to die, not because it's a bad idea, but it is because it's a National Assembly, you know? So if we don't do these two things, and I'm praying to God, you know, this country is not going to change if we don't change. I am telling you the truth. You cannot replace passion. If your president has never stepped in a stadium to watch a game of his own country play, you are not going to convince that guy that sports can actually work. If he wasn't at Nyayo in Savara, I was there. And we were all like, oh yeah, finally somebody watched the Super Bowl and decided, after him we can have performances at Nyayo. You know? You cannot replace passion. So, can we agree, those of you who are here, first of all, if you don't vote, there's a big problem with you. Secondly, passion matters. If people are not passionate about things, Moi built those stadiums because Moi used to go to the stadium. I remember growing up, when Harambee Stars used to play, we all waited for Moi to come so that we don't pay entrance. Because it's true. He would get to the stadium, those who have paid, then he said, Sasa, wacheni wananchi waingie. Those wananchi were us guys. We didn't have the money to pay. And he built those facilities for us. So these two amendments, I have spoken to Drew. I've told him I am willing to try again to bring those amendments, to resurrect those amendments. Let us change the regime of registration of sporting associations. It will be very easy for American money to come and invest in Kenyan sport. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. And we really need you. We really need you on that, because I think people are willing to invest in sport, but it needs to be made easy to do and the returns to come. And talking about returns, I want to bring Tom Wallace back into this conversation. Tom, I know a lot of club owners or people who run clubs wonder, how can I make enough money to pay people who work in this club, not just players, the whole staffing, competitive salaries, and make money from this investment. It's like, Sandra touched on it a bit, that you're creating the brand first, but that takes almost years and years of building that brand, and not enough people willing to risk in advance. So just tell us, how do you measure the return on investment when developing sports in Africa or in Kenya in particular?
Thanks, Carol. That was wonderful intro just on some of the barriers. I just want to claim my little part in Kenyan sports history really quickly before I answer your question, because I don't think you know this, Carol. Thunder was, 36-0 last season, right, in the Premier League? 11 years ago, I was on the other infamous team that went 0-30 in the Premier League, the Nairobi Blazers. Very famous team, I know. So you have history sitting right next to each other. Part of that was like we would wait for an hour for the water to dry on the court. So nothing has changed in the last 10, 12 years at Nyayo Stadium. And that's partially one of the reasons that I did not, when I was asked to get involved in basketball a decade ago, I didn't want to get involved because of those barriers that were just very entrenched. So I also love an underdog. So as an American, I sort of want to answer what is that return on investment that we're looking for as the American on the panel, and why we're getting involved in baseball, and why baseball is such an attractive thing to us. First of all, as a fan of an underdog, baseball has been widely underdeveloped, baseball and softball in Kenya specifically. There are thousands of players across the country that have received equipment. There's equipment that's come in. There's been equipment dropped, skills, trainings happening all the time, and then Americans leave just because creating the environment for baseball has been really difficult. The one thing that hasn't been done is the creation of a field, right? So that's where we really started our model and getting involved in. When we met players who were playing baseball, the passion was so clear. It was crystal clear. And actually, even though there's a baseball federation and a softball federation, the barriers to getting involved were very low because there was not sort of this immediate monetization opportunity. There is thinking of the monetization that people see it. And while that has created problems, it's not happening tomorrow. Monetization of baseball is not going to happen in the next week. I'm a big fan of monetizing sports. I think it's absolutely critical. And if you want to know the leading expert of doing that is Sandra right here sitting next to me. She's got the best business mind in sports happening right now. But for baseball, monetizing sports and looking at return of investment is about looking at the young people that we're investing in. And so what we were able to do is find a public partner, JQuat, who came forward and provided land and said, we've got 10 acres at a education, Ministry of Education, entity that didn't have a sports mandate, but that required that they provide things to their customers, their students. And so they have a lot of players wanting to play baseball, and there's players all over the universities that are playing baseball. That's where baseball is thriving. So we were able to go in and say, all right, we will partner with you as U.S. investors. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We will bring money from the U.S. and we will invest it in infrastructure in your university. But the fact is, I'm not a wealthy individual. There's not somebody handing us $1 million checks to monetize baseball because of the immediate ROI. So we were able to turn to the university and say, actually, you know what? We need to do a survey on this land. We're going to come to you and ask you for your expertise. So the adjunct professors are the ones who are drawing the schematics. The students are the ones that are doing the surveys. The farm team is the one managing the field. We did not come in and say, we want to make this our asset. We actually said that this is a community asset. This is something that the university has all of the assets to put forward. And you heard this earlier today, which is that people who invest need to see skin in the game. If it's hard to put skin in the game from the outside, there's going to create barriers. So I 100% endorse that move to make it easier for investors to have that skin in the game. But I think we also need to realize that Kenyan institutions, while they are troubled and challenged in certain areas, actually we need to call on those institutions to draw on their own capabilities. When I turned to the board of JQuat and said, I'm not here to tell you that you can't do this, I'm here to tell you that I can't do this without you. We got 100% buy-in. We're still finalizing our MOU with JQuat, but for the last 3 years, we've built a field. We've raised about $40,000, okay? Tell me where you can spend $40,000 in infrastructure and get the following results. We are now running the first 18 and over senior league in the country we started at 6 teams, we're now at 8. We have players moving from South Sudan to play in that league because they know we're not there to monetize them only, and that it's a space that people can come play. So we're in our second season of that. We have teams from Mombasa all over the country now playing. We are now running the first Nairobi Little League. Now, Little League is the largest brand in youth sports across the world. 2 million people play that game all across the world, and there are in 80 countries. And now Kenya is one of the first to do that. And that's because we didn't just say this is only monetizable, right? So we have basically a model that we're focused on, which is build, play, and grow. And we are focused on building infrastructure. We're focused on creating spaces for people to play, for economies to grow around that, and then for individuals, leaders, the next generation to be the individuals who can be the ones responsible for those invested funds. So I would say, how do you measure your ROI? I mean, first of all, you have to realize that it's patient capital in some of these sports, like grassroots and emerging sports. Basketball, it can be a little bit more immediate. But capital has to be patient, and we need capital from the government, and we need private sector partners who are willing to make a long-term investment and say, yes, this will pay off over time. But more importantly, the number of youth that are accessing play in a city where there is dwindling amounts of green space, that is a true initial measure of success. There are fewer and fewer places for young kids from Kibera, Kibigari, from Gigiri, from wherever your background is. It's nearly impossible to access play. I want to say one last thing about measuring success and monetization of youth sports, like from my perspective as a kid who grew up playing sports in America. And that's sort of a warning around the challenges of monetization of youth sports. So let's just talk about Little League I just spoke about, right? We've launched Little League. We have 8 teams from across the city. We have 150 youth for the first time playing. Are we telling these youth that their only pathway to success is to go off and be monetized and be sold to the United States at play college? That would be incorrect. What we do tell them is that you now have a pathway to go to JQuat. JQuat has a baseball field. If we can start measuring that kids have a pathway to college and can be contributors to the economy by getting an education and a degree and hopefully finding a job, in sports, that's a great indicator. But here's the reality, and this is probably equal in basketball. 2 million players playing Little League, 0.03% of those players make it to Major League Baseball. That is 3 in 10,000 players who play Little League primarily in the United States. How hard is it for a kid coming from Kibigari who's playing baseball to make it in those percentages? They have a higher percentage chance to go to college, and that's what we should be focused on. And I'll wrap up just saying that 7% in high school go on to play college baseball. So I think we have to measure this idea of success around, are we exporting or are we focused on in-sport? Are we focused on keeping talent here and building an ecosystem that can thrive, and we can measure that we've invested in young people that can build an ecosystem that will lead to more economic growth? I hope that answered the question.
It answers in terms of baseball, which is an emerging sport. I think, as you say, some more developed sport, which a lot of grown adults are playing full-time and would like to pay their bills. It's not happening, and it's not through a lack of talent or a lack of leagues. Probably organization around the teams. I want to open the floor to those of you in the audience. We only have about 15 minutes maximum before we need to close this session. But I also want to talk a bit about athlete branding, because Savara touched on it, but that is also what attracts not just athlete branding, it's athlete branding, it's the team branding, it's the whole league and competitions branding, and I'm not sure who on the panel wants to take that up. Or, I saw Marek in the audience, but I think he left. Marek, are you still here? Do we have a sports marketer here? Because there's... Oh, Cynthia! Come on, Cynthia. Is there a microphone we can pass to Cynthia Mumbo? Mumo, she's a she's a sports marketer, my fellow director at Africa Women in Sports Initiative and founding member. But yeah, focusing a lot on sports branding. And I first saw the baseball, what do you call it, pitch, on your Insta story. So just talk to us a bit about branding and why it's important to get monetization.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia Mumbo. I'm the founder and CEO of Sports Connect Africa. I sit on the board of If We Build It and the board of OEC, and I work together with many of us in this room, actually. When we talk about marketing, I've always, my background is marketing, so when you talk about marketing, you want to understand the need. We're constantly talking about marketing, but who is the consumer, right? And I don't think I've had that conversation happen this whole day. That we talk about the players, we talk about the teams, we talk about, you know, everything else, but for who? It's for the fans. And the fans rarely ever feature in our conversation. I worked at EABL and I worked at Yana, and I was in sales. And anytime you're in sales, the conversation you're always talking about is the bottom line, right? So when you're talking about the bottom line, you're talking about high-level numbers. But where do those high-level numbers come from? So any corporate will tell you they need to understand the consumer so that then they can be able to sell. So even for athletes and even for sports teams, you have to be able to position yourself for the consumer to consume your product. Thunder is doing it pretty well. Sandra is a good friend of mine. And basketball is my sport, so anyone who knows me knows that I will always talk about basketball first. Branding is about, it's not just about, you know, the Pepsi. That Pepsi logo is there, but what is the promise, right? And the promise in sports is always the experience. So it is the experience for the fan. I always talk about two key stakeholders. It's the experience for the fan, it's the experience for the athlete. And everything else kind of will work. Because if the infrastructure isn't nice, the loos at Nyayo are horrible. Forget about just the roof, but the loos at Nyayo are bad. If you go to Nyayo Stadium to watch the game, if you have kids, do you think of taking your kids to watch the game? Because you want a Sunday to go and take your kids. But then, again, branding is not just about that logo. It's about the promise. It's about the experience. So even for athletes, if they're going to position themselves, they work in an ecosystem. So yes, I'm going to be on Instagram. Yes, I'm going to be on Facebook. But what is the ecosystem that supports my talent? So if I am Omanyala, actually, let me ask, how many of us watch our athletes? How many of us can name, not Gor Mahia players, he's the CEO of Gor Mahia. So how many of us here can name Gor Mahia players today? 2 people. Actually, 1.
The loud ones.
And they work in sports. So it's really, Gor Mahia is the biggest club. There's no FC guy here, right?
Hey, Senator is here.
But you guys get my point.
Cynthia, you're going far. Harambee Stars.
Yes. Okay. Let's name 3 Harambee Stars players. So how do we sell what we don't see, what we don't know? How do you call that a brand when you can't position it? We have to go back to the basics, and the basics is sports is an ecosystem. It has to work when everything else works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Ray, right next to you, wants to speak from Gor Mahia.
Thank you very much. My name is Raymond Uru. I'm a sports consultant.
Do you wish us to sing to make you feel at home? Kogalo.
See, the strangest, okay, the senator is going to take it's going to take, there'll be problems here. Senator, I just wanted to emphasize what you said about repositioning our Sports Act. 4 or 5 years ago, Gor Mahia could beat Yanga and Simba anytime, anywhere, friendly, international. These days, we can't even think about it. Simba last week was in the CAF Confederation final, which, if someone said if it was a one-legged final, they'd have probably won. Yanga, let's not even speak about it. If they want any of our players, we cannot refuse. There's a story of how Duke Abuya ended up at Yanga. Police tried to hold on to their players, but the money that was thrown to them, let's just say Duke plays for Yanga. Look at the top teams in Africa. I'll just name them randomly. TP Mazembe, Mamelodi Sundowns, Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs. Those are all individual properties where you can invest in it and see returns. And I'm glad you asked. Who owns Gor? Who owns FC? Sifuna there owns it. I own it, and I can see some Luos here own that. Even that one owns Gor Mahia. But what next? Easily, and Senator, here is where you go back to your people. My son was born 25 years ago. FC Leopards has never won anything. So, in as much as we are useless...
That's personal.
No. It's fact. It's fact. Actually, it's more. It's 33 years.
But is it necessary? Is it
1988.
To drive a point. All I'm saying is that we may not be the most structured people as Gor Mahia, but there's one thing we do to the fans, we win. So I think for investment to make sense, the vehicle must be right and it must be legal. And hopefully you can help us do that.
Thank you very much, Ray. By the way, he was not trolling AFC. A club as big as AFC, and if I'm not wrong, in terms of how big the Luya community are, they are the biggest fan base, and it's no laughing matter. They're the biggest fan base in Kenya, and they're essentially the biggest club. And they have not won the league since 1988, and it's a concern. It's a troll. I'm an Arsenal fan, I shouldn't be talking. But it's a concern, because if things were being done right, like Nairobi City Thunder, investment, season unbeaten, title, BAL, you see the progression. So, yeah, you trolled him with a lot of sense. There's a lady over there. I can't quite see. If she can get the microphone. Thank you. We only have about 5 minutes left, and I still need to let the panel give closing remarks and final comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sylvia Kamau. I'm a sports enthusiast. Caro, shut up. Oh,
I couldn't see it was you. Hi, Sylvia.
So, hi. My question is to the Senator. I'm glad you've discussed the 465 billion you were defending last week, but I'm still not comfortable with the response you've given. Because all you've told us is that you've given this suggestion and it might be shot down. So that should sit well with us, and you should probably give us a way forward on that. My second part of the question to you again is, there are 3 organizations. There is a Ministry of Sports, there's a sports fund, and there's a registrar offices. You're the lawyer. Are these institutions gatekeeping in themselves? Do they? If they do, and if they do, what can we do from the legal aspect, or from the county aspect, or from the Senate? What laws can you pass for them to be more accessible, and especially the sports fund?
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Sylvia didn't introduce herself. She is from Equity Sports, Equity Basketball.
Coach Equity Men Senior and National Team. And
okay, she's explained. But when I met her, she was actually the CEO of Kenya Rugby Union. So she's a woman of many talents. So, Sifuna, would you like to answer that quickly? Or should we, I think, can you hold on it? We get a few comments from the audience, and as you're giving your closing remarks as the panel, just note down what has been directed to you or what you would like to speak about so that we can go through. The microphone is there and then it can come forward.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Quinta Odongo. I'm in sports commercial conversation as well, but coming in today as the CEO of Legacy Foundation, Football Foundation. My conversation, Senator, is around understanding that before we get to commercialization, we have to develop. Where we are right now as Kenya in terms of sports, we've got to develop. Anyone who's registered a sports organization in this room understands that just the fact that your organization has the word sports, you have to cough a lot of money for it to be registered. Because there's a disconnect between the registrar's office and the sports registrar. So as long as you're going to register Blackhawk Sports, you have to find ways, the Kenyan way, to get that registered. Are we gatekeeping? And then besides that, we need to work around supporting the developing sports in our nation. Bringing in sports equipment in Kenya is the most expensive thing that you can have. We currently have a program right now that we're bringing in equipment to capacitate 470 football clubs. The procedure of getting Ministry of Sports approval to KRA approval to customs approval is insane. So when you're talking about commercializing, you can't commercialize what you've not developed, what you've not built. And the first thing to talking about commercialization is collaboration. There are nations that have done this before and have managed to get certain programs going on. So they have expertise, equipment, investment. So as we focus on investment, are we also looking at sports assets and merchandising and equipment? It's easier to bring drugs in Kenya than to bring sports equipment in Kenya. You understand how bad it is? So, Senator, as you're working around the policies around it, can we have clarity in terms of bringing in sports equipment, and can we find rebates around it? And lastly, as we work with betting companies and giving them rebates, 90% of everyone sitting here went to school through sports program. How are we encouraging sports institutions to extend sports scholarship? I'm a product of Strathmore Sports Program. What are we doing to encourage universities to continue with these programs? But if we can be able to give betting companies tax rebates on them sponsoring the game, can we work with the education institutions to give them rebates to give in more investment in sports education, sports management? Because we can't build if we don't educate. Most of us doing sports consultancy had to go out to study and come in. Can we build it from the knowledge perspective up into execution?
Thank you, thank you. Are you from Football Alive by any chance? Okay. There's an American organization called Football Alive who sent 10,000 footballs that got stuck at the airport for 3 months. And their paperwork was in order. But yeah, very quickly, we only have like 2 minutes left, so also make your questions a bit short, please.
I'll try my best. Hi, everybody. My name is Nick. I'm kind of approaching this from more of a private sector approach. I'm with Savara on this one. I've actually done Pro Bowl halftime shows in the US, so I know what goes into it and how much it also generates for communities and how much it does to pull even, let's say, the non-fan to come watch a sport with their loved ones. We just hosted about 6,000 people this last weekend in Naivasha. For those who saw, we were the ones causing all the dust in Kidong at Captain James Camp. The essence of that facility is also to engage entertainment and sports in one space, where we invite all manner of sports. There's swimming, there's basketball, there's a field, and so on, but also at the same time incorporate entertainment with it as well. I'm curious to understand from a government perspective how, in reverse, in essence, how would government come and either invest or help promote private investors like ourselves who have facilities, who want to grow the facilities even more for the community. In essence, we've kind of decided we're not going to wait for people or government to do what they should do. We've decided that let's see what we can do with what we have. But we still need help as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One final question, and then we have closing remarks. Over there. Oh. Oh. There'll still be an opportunity for networking one-on-one. So I just need to respect the program they've given us.
Hello, my name is Lynn. I sports many things. And my question is directed, I'm not sure if it's a question, a comment, but yeah, to Senator Sifuna, and it's around sports infrastructure. I do agree with him that it's really stressful to think about the fact that the two main stadiums that we talk about were built before most of us in the room were born. However, as a legislator, I don't know whose role it is or what your thoughts are, but stadiums and construction is really like a costly affair in the country. We have so many incomplete facilities. Money has been allocated to the facilities over and over. Case in point, Kipchoge Keino Stadium, just pointing one of the facilities. I think since the Kibaki government, when I was new in the newsroom as a sports reporter, I would sit and listen to the budget reading and listen to how much money has been allocated to the sports docket, right? From those days, there would be money that was allocated to the Kipchoge Keino Stadium. All those years down the line, you go there, it's not complete. Each new minister comes, they go, they issue threats, they fire the contractor, another contractor comes, another minister comes, they go, they fire the contractor. What happens? The contractors, do they return the money? You know, like every year, money is allocated to all these infrastructures. So whose role is it? What can be done? And then, yeah, so we could go on and on about, stadiums, and I do think we should. Maybe just the other one still around infrastructure. How do we also ensure that for the sports infrastructures that we are building are financially sustainable? Talanta Stadium is a brilliant idea by face value. However, it's a costly stadium that is not a multi-purpose sports facility. And if you ask me, it's a stadium that we didn't need, at least not in Nairobi. We have the two other stadiums in Nairobi, and they are run down. Anyone who's been to the Nyayo National Stadium, to the basketball gymnasium, will tell you it's horrific. You go to the Kasarani Stadium, it's, the aquatic space, it's not usable, and all these other facilities are run down. So why are we building such a huge stadium while we can't maintain what we already have? I mean, it's really crazy.
Thank you, Lynn. Sorry guys, I've been signaled at the door, wind up. So we have very little time to wind up, but I'm going to let everyone on the panel speak. Sifuna, I know you have a lot to cover. I think try and summarize as much as you can that we have everybody 2 minutes to wind up.
Yeah, it is expected that many of the questions will be directed at me.
Sorry, as we're talking, I also want us to think recommendations and solutions. So put that into your final remarks.
Yeah, but I just want to make it clear that I do not speak for government. I am famously a leader of an opposition political party. And many of these things, maybe we will deal with them if ever we acquire power or when. Let's start with Sylvia. The question was on this 1% and what you can do. First of all, it is a start. You can imagine the Nairobi Boxing Association going to Vihiga and they are moving around Waheshimiwa's offices. They get 50K from Sifuna, 100 to... We just wanted to remove that indignity. 1% of the 20 billion shillings that we sent to Nairobi this last financial year is about 200 million shillings. If you say there were 10, 15 registered sports associations, even if you gave those associations just 10 mic per year, I think you have sorted those people out. Now, how you can help, I am sure you come from a constituency. Which constituency do you come from? Do you people speak to your members of parliament? We tried it with you during the finance bill. And I want that spirit of direct access to members of the National Assembly, not to send them threats or nudes or whatever it is, just to tell them that when that bill appears before the floor of the House, I want you to vote in such and such a direction. That you can help me. Because I told you there is all sorts of fights going on between us and them, and that's the reason why sometimes they shoot down all the legislation that we propose. Secondly, about the functioning of the sports registrar and the sports fund, and this is something Quinta also spoke about, it is, everybody in this country knows, it is just plain and obvious corruption. There is no other way to call it. It's not gatekeeping, it's called corruption. Just call it by its name. And until we have administrations in place that are serious about that, it's going to be very difficult. And it has a correlation to how investors think. If an investor knows that the dispute resolution mechanisms in your country are so tenuous that somebody can easily bribe a judge and you lose your entire investment because, you know, they have been given some amount of money, nobody is going to put any investment here. Sometimes you hear, oh, contracts have been entered into and they say the arbitration shall be done in London. Why do they insist on those clauses or in Singapore? Because they know that the dispute resolution infrastructure in the country is very tenuous. People don't feel like they can protect the investment. If you put $100 million or $1 million in an investment and then somebody just wakes up and grabs the land, sends vijana in, says in shamba yetu, I mean, there's nobody who's going to put money in an environment such as that. Then Cynthia, it's good, she's from marketing, and if she was at EABL, she knows I give those guys free advertising. I think everybody in Kenya knows what I drink, except the Pepsi people. It's about the experience, where everybody knows. Mnajua mimi ni waziri wa sherehe. Tunapenda sherehe. I'm not going to spend my money and then have the sort of shitty experience that she's talking about. I don't know if you were at EABL when Safari Sevens began, and then some genius decided that they were going to move it from Ngong Road and brought it to Nyayo Stadium because of numbers. We were having fun on Ngong Road. We were used to our problems on Ngong Road. Then somebody decided, oh, let's even try it Kasarani. It died because of a fun experience. I have been lucky in my life. I've seen sports stadia, and it's not at Kenya only. It's an entire thing. It's how you manage traffic. Is there water at the facility? How are the loose? Those of us who slept on the road going to Masaku Sevens have experiences to share. And those problems are not here alone. I was at the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York to watch tennis. And you cannot compare the stadium in the tennis stadium in Arthur Ashe and the experience at there is the stadium we went for the Rugby World Cup in 23. It's called, yes. Immediately the game ends, the way the people are evacuated from the stadium, at the Stade de France, is very different. You go to Arthur Ashe and all of you leave the stadium at the same time, you're all waiting for Ubers. And you're standing there for hours and hours waiting for a cab. So that entire experience, it convinces people whether they're going to attend a function or not. The reason why Nyayo empties so quickly is because it is near town and people just walk. The Gor Mahia and FC fans just sing and go into town and everybody takes their matatu. But if you're going to take us to Ngong Road, have you put the commensurate infrastructure for us to be able to evacuate people quickly from the venue? Thirdly, there was the question on taxation of sports equipment and sports scholarships. Now, the Senate has no powers to legislate taxation. And this is the reason why there's going to be a conversation that I'm going to involve you as Kenyans. We want a constitutional amendment to give the Senate powers to discuss money. Because we feel that we are more reasonable. Don't tell them that I say that. We feel that we are more reasonable in the Senate than in the National Assembly. They are proposing amendments to the Constitution to give themselves this NGCDF fund, and they have thrown in something called the Senate Oversight Fund. They thought they were going to hook us on that. We want serious constitutional changes. I can say here for a fact that I don't want that money. I don't want the Senate Oversight Fund. I want to be able to legislate and to be able to be in a position where people don't easily veto ideas that have originated from the Senate. So, unfortunately for you, you have to call your member of parliament in the National Assembly on questions of taxations. It's ridiculous. People give you donations for sports equipment that you actually need, and you put embargo after embargo to ensure that it doesn't reach the people who need it. And then Nick, I think on government support for private facilities, it's going to be very difficult, Nick, because Kenya famously doesn't have money. We don't have money for anything, by the way. So by the time they are coming to help you, you'll be asked, wale watoto hawajaenda shule, we don't have medicine in our hospitals, and so on and so forth. So it is very, you are on your own. That's what I'm saying. Which one have I left out? Because I'm running very fast. And sports scholarships, again, I don't discuss money. I wish I could. I wish I had those powers, and I'll be coming to you in a referendum to give me those powers. Lynn, the straight answer, you remember the current president, I think when he was campaigning for the second term of Jubilee, right? Yes, the famous Kamarin Stadium and all the others. Whose role it is? I sit on the Senate Public Accounts Committee. We visited the stadium recently, the Kipchoge Keino. It is true. This government is obsessed with construction, and those constructions never come to an end, because that is where the money is. That is where the money is. They will build for you things you don't need. You have the governor of Makueni, he appears before our committee and he tells us they are forcing him to build what they call county aggregation and industrial parks, which do not work for Makueni. But the national government has a contractor who has already agreed with whoever it is there that Yangu ni Kumi, the thing has to be built. You have read in the newspapers of a market that is being built right next to another one that has stalled. Because for them it is about the building. Whether it is a functional thing or whether you need it at all, that is not the problem. You see them every day here at the Met site for the Mukuru slum upgrading project. Give it 2 to 3 months. You will hear the stories from Mukuru. So we are, unfortunately, not a very serious people. And it will take a lot. It will take a lot. We need to change a lot of things in our country. We need to actively pursue corrupt people. If you look at those contracts in those stadiums, people have been paid, contractors have been paid upwards of 70-80% of the contract price. Watu wamekula pesa, they are kicked out, another one comes, he is given another set of resources to build, and then it just is a cycle. Lastly, Nyayo Stadium and Kasarani Stadium are always under repair. Always under repair. One time we had to host, was it the Kenya 15s girls who had qualified for the World Cup? And we were taken to the Ulinzi Stadium, where every 5 minutes, because it is right under the busiest airport in Africa, there is a plane landing. So every 3 minutes, and it's such a distraction. So Ababu was still the CS for sports then. And I asked him, why is it not possible for someone to develop a schedule for repairs that will ensure that one stadium is always available? Can you believe it? No one in government can do that. That you schedule repairs for Nyayo such that Kasarani is open for us to host games. We were very disappointed as Kenyan football fans. We are playing Ivory Coast, the African champions, in Malawi. Yeah, for the fans, it is very painful, you know. So I don't know what I can say, but we have many problems in this country. And the solutions are going to be with you. Finally, on Talanta Stadium, I agree with you, maybe it is an expensive project and so on and so forth, but we need that infrastructure. Whether it is going to be sustainable or not is another discussion. But at least we have a facility. It's a private facility. They're not using taxpayers' money, at least officially. It is a PPP model. That's what I've been told as your representative. It is a PPP model. That is the only reason that thing is being built. Otherwise, it would look like Kamarin. The only reason this expressway was built is because it is private money. I need you to understand this. So,
we'll discuss it another day because
it is a private facility, and the investor will recover his investment the same way Umoja Expressway is recovering their investment. So I think I'm going to stop there, and thank you all.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
I hope, finally, I hope I have not painted a very grim picture, but it is better to know what is ailing you so that we can all work on it. Otherwise, if you go to the doctor and tell him it's just a headache, na ni ile ingine, utapewa dawa ya hii. That's you. Asante sana.
Senator, I was about to say we're supposed to be encouraging investment, not chasing them away. But the good news is that there are private people who are doing a good thing, even though the government, as Sifuna has painted the picture, appears to be giving us some challenges. I'm looking for the right word so we don't get into trouble. But there are private opportunities, and I'm giving each panelist, please, 60 seconds. 60 seconds, if you can, to just wind up. Sandra, I'll let you go first.
Okay, a few reflections that you can take as recommendations, be as it may. One, when we were starting out, bigger brands like, the Safaricom, the banks we were too small for them. And we had success at that mid-tier level, a combination of Kenyan and actually American companies that have broken through the startup phase, either have raised money but have a marketing budget. So that could be one place to look at for brand support beyond NSE-listed companies. Two is, for us, basketball, I can say, we must have collective action to move forward. For example, there's no media deal for the league. As a team, if you go to a media station, they'll tell you, we need rights from all the teams, all the players, allowing us to use their image on TV, right? Only a federation can do that. So it's on us as the teams to come together and force their hand to do that. And then lastly, I would just say that the cross-pollination conversation is absolutely important, not just from, athletes, artists, teams, but even the supporting actors in the industry. Our athletes now are getting approached for brand deals, endorsements, and they're getting contracts that say we want your image rights in perpetuity, right? So the IP lawyers, we also need you in the sports space, and I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation. But I think overall, the opportunity is in the chaos. If you come on, it's perfect, it's too late.
Thank you very much. Wallace, please.
Thanks.
60 seconds.
Yeah, I just want to say what we're doing is working. I do want to say, we say tunajenga, tunacheza. We are playing, we are making revenue. We've done events where we've done tickets all the way out of Juja. We did over 100,000 shillings in sales in just one day, donations. So people are coming to watch. We had over 500 people come to watch baseball. So first of all, come watch baseball at JKUAT at the Nairobi Field of Dreams on September 13th and 14th. We will have the Nairobi Baseball Community Championship Series. You can come watch Little League play their championship game. We'll have teams from all over Kenya. We will have teams from all over Nairobi, 18 and over. So it is working. It is driving the ability for us to build something. Secondly, I would say community infrastructure doesn't need to be massive, Senator. I think like small bits, even at the county level, I believe in devolved powers, right? So I think not saying, hey, we've got to build the big Talanta, we can build the small Talanta. What does that look like? Why are our schools not the hubs for sports across the country? And I am a taxpayer in Kenya, so this is my first chance to actually say something to a member that represents me. Because I'm American, but I pay taxes. So I think we can invest in schools. We can invest in primary and secondary and universities. And I think that's a great way to get past these other models. And there's ways to do, hopefully in the sports bill reform or in the Sports Act reform, possibly looking at smaller entities that aren't regulated by the federations. I think that's one thing to think about. Federations only regulate things that are professional. If you read the Sports Act, it's only entities that run professional businesses. Some of these businesses out there are social enterprises or nonprofits. They don't need to be regulated by the federations or mandated by the federations. And the last thing I want to add as a member of AmCham, and I brought this up before, and it's a unique moment, AmCham does not have a subcommittee on sports, to my knowledge, as a member. And I do not want this conversation to only happen annually or whenever there's funding to run one of these events. This should be something that we collectively come together and work with you so you don't have to go talk to one person about those bills. And I'm happy to step forward to help bring that forward as one of the Americans, as a member of American Chamber of Commerce. Tunajenga, tunacheza.
Savara, you'll go last because I know you'll wind us up. Allow us to have Robert give us his closing remarks and any comment.
Okay, I've been given 60 seconds, so I'm timing myself so that we can keep time. So one of the most important things I want to recognize is we discussed so much about challenges over here, but something my wife keeps keeps reminding me about is appreciate the small little things, the good things that have happened. When you look across the panel over here, I think you can say you've got some of the big American sports. You've got ice hockey, you've got basketball, you've got baseball, and you also have the halftime show as well. I'm recognizing you as a sport, by the way. Yeah, so with ice hockey, as much as we've experienced some of these things, some of the key wins we've had, in 2019, Team USA, you beat us and you lifted the Madaraka Day Cup. But this year, we decided to beat Team World. That's a win for us. Last year, we lifted a trophy in South Africa for the Friendship League. This is coming from a sport that we barely had the right equipment. We're getting the right equipment slowly by slowly. And so for any investors who are around here, I can promise you that you're in the right place. These are the right people over here. And also for the rest of the sports, don't give up hope. We still have an opportunity to be able to make it big. So always look at the small little things and appreciate them. Thank you.
If you'll allow me just to say about ice hockey, we're closing, my dear, we're closing. If you allow me to just say about ice hockey, because I know a little bit. Right now, they survive by a partnership with an organization called the Friendship League, which is, I think, Canadian-based. And they literally just get, it's donations. But what we need sustainability. We need money in the pockets of people who play, people who coach, people who referee, the whole ecosystem. Robert is still around if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with him, but ice hockey in Kenya is open for business. Savara.
Yeah. Hello. Yo, I'm not a comedian. Stop laughing, man. Yeah, so these guys have said everything, and there's the detailed kind of recommendations that you guys are, you know everything. As an artist, I'm just here to shed light and niwaambie kitu moja, very important. If you look in history, even if you look at Africa, the nations that are having interior problems. Can you just close that door, please? Yes, thank you. Allah. Nashanga. So, like, the nations that have been having interior problems, they take all their problems or they seek solace in what? In music and sports. So this is the reality of the situation in this country. Where we are emotionally, politically, economically, it's in a very shambolic state that our only source of solace is music and sports. If you destroy it, that's on you. We will have such a big problem. So as we are constructing this continent, as we are developing this country, we need to make sure music and sports are very strong because all these citizens come to their stadiums and put their problems there. If we don't do that, we will build only churches. Yes, yes,
Thank
and
you.
we will take all our problems to those churches, and you know how it is. So, guys, let's build music and sports. And then, as we fight all other issues, we will have a place to put all our sorrows. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Savara, and thank you. Just a footnote, I've been fortunate enough to go for an NBA game in Dallas. The experience was just unbelievable. Whether or not I was a basketball fan didn't matter. Anyone who loves, and the experience is what makes sport so magical. So if we love sport and everybody loves music, there's a win-win situation for everybody. So I think just to sign up, we've talked about entertainment opportunities. Security in sports was just touched on somewhere. I think, Senator, you brought it up on how they manage fans, which is something we haven't managed to do in this country. Development opportunities, sponsorship, partnerships. We didn't speak enough about IP and rights. And Lynn over there, she's very humble, but she's part of the managing team for Kipchoge Keino. She won't say it, I'll say it. And if we had time, she would have spoken as well. But we have to wind up. There are opportunities, I believe, to have one-on-one conversations with each other. But I think let's give a round of applause for our panel.